Does the God of the Bible know the shape, size, and breadth of the world? The answer seems to be a resounding no. Here's one good example on why I believe that to be the case. On the day of Pentecost, when Jews were gathered together in Jerusalem, it says, "There were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men, of every nation under heaven." And if you just skim through the chapter, this doesn't really stand out. But if you just think about it for a second, you're like, wait a minute. Is that a literal statement? Because it says something quite literally that devout men of every nation under heaven. That would include many people who definitely could not have actually have been there. And if you just look at many of the nations that were listed later on in the chapter, it's quite clear that they have no idea how big the world actually is. There were Parthians, Medes, Elamites, dwellers from Mesopotamia and Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, parts of Libya, Cyrene, strangers from Rome, obviously, people from the island of Crete, the Arabians, and so on and so forth. Isn't it interesting that all of these people groups that are represented here are all really just regional people groups? These are not people from every nation under the heavens. And the fact of the matter was, this phrase goes unnoticed for many centuries because for many centuries, they believed that that region of the world, the Mediterranean region and Mesopotamia, Northern Africa, Southern Europe, they believed that was the entire world. And we know this because they left us maps. Some of the oldest maps from ancient Greece describe the world much like this. This is from 500 some odd years before Christ. You had Europe, Libya, and Asia, and then everything was surrounded by an ocean. That was the limits of the world. And then later maps from the same people group, roughly 500 or so years before Christ, give a very similar depiction of the world. Again, only three like generalized continents. And fast forward to just about 100 years before Jesus, we've got still something quite similar. We've got Rome, northern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and then a little bit of what would have been considered Asia. But again, very small, very compact world. If this was the view of the world during the time of the disciples, then obviously they would say, yes, there were Jews, there were devout men from every nation under the heavens. And that certainly could have been a true statement. We have more maps from just after the time of Jesus that still seem to represent something similar, although this one here doesn't quite seem to indicate the shape of the earth. It just indicates the various continents. You've got a very strange looking Europe here, Asia, Arabian Peninsula, and Northern Africa here, and then some bodies of water. Here's a later rendering of said map, but again, it's still outlined by water. So again, the world that they knew was quite small. So when we read Acts chapter 2, when it says that people came from every nation under the heavens, it says it because they believed it, because they had no idea the scope of the size of the world. And if they did mean everybody under the heavens, then they just said something that was geographically untrue, because they missed everybody from actual Asia, Russia. They definitely didn't get anybody from Australia. Definitely didn't get anybody from the actual West, like over in the Americas. We missed a ton of people. So this is a problem. Every time the world is mentioned in the Bible, the world is tiny. And isn't it funny that God's perception of the world is never different than the people living at that time? Every time the world is described in the Bible, it just happens to match what the people of that time period believed about the world.